in there? Oh, they're both in? Okay.
Slow. 7 o'clock.
Jealous.
I'd like to call a meeting to order. I'd like to call a meeting to order. Please be seated.
Oh, of course. Elma J. Bud.
I'd like to recognize Joe Guthrie. Would you lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the 2019 deliberative session for the Hampstead School District. And I'd just like to introduce some of the people that are here. We have our school board to my right. To your left of me, we have Karen Yasenka, the chair. We have Jason Cipriano, the vice chair. We have Kathleen Abruzzi, school board member. We have Caitlin Parnell, school board member. And Jim Sweeney is also here as a member of the school board. From the administration, we have Dr. Metzler. We have Roxanne Wilson, the assistant superintendent. We have Jeffrey Dow, the business administrator. And we have Jim O'Shaughnessy, the counsel for the school district. Also here is Nancy Lacasse, who's to my right. She is the clerk. And is Laura Jones, she's the treasurer. And prior to tonight's meeting, I spent some time and I made a Town of Hampstead deliberative session moderator's rules of procedure. And I try to do this so that someone could have, something to look at in case they wanted to participate. And I put it on the town website, so that's where you can find this. I also have extra copies for people. But what we're going to do tonight, we're going to discuss, debate, and potentially amend warrants that has been prepared. And as we'll do one article, we'll do one article at a time as they appear on the warrant article. And I'm going to ask someone to move the article forward, someone to second it from the school board. And if it's petition article, a petitioner will have to do that. There's no petition articles here tonight that I'm aware of. And everyone who speaks, I'm going to ask you to use the microphone up there. I'm going to ask you to identify yourself and where you live in Hampstead. And really only people from Hampstead that are registered voters can speak. However, I'm going to make an exception if there's no objections to certain people that might need their expertise, like Mr. Shaughnessy. We may need legal advice, or someone else who may not live in Hampstead, but we'll allow them to speak unless someone objects to that. And we can make amendments to the warrant articles, but not all warrant articles, only certain ones. And if we have amendments, I'm going to ask that they be in writing and that you give it to me, and I'll give it to the clerk so she can get it into the record. If someone thinks the meeting is going too long, you can call the question and we can have a vote. And that stops the debate, and that would be 2/3 to do that. I'm asking everybody to be courteous and polite. And I think we'll do most votes, hopefully by sound. I'll listen to you, and if I'll say all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say nay. And if I can't figure it out, we'll do a hand count. And eventually we can go to a ballot count if we have to, but I hope we don't have to do that because we don't have enough people to do that. But if someone wants to, we can do that. And it has to, if someone wants a ballot count, it has to be 5 registered voters prior to the count, and they have to be identified as registered voters, and they have to put it in writing, and they have to ask that we have a ballot count on an amendment. So I hope that tonight that everybody is thoughtful, respectful of others, and I hope we make wise decisions. And let me start by reading the warrant itself. Now, this is the warrant that we have, and you should all have a copy, and hopefully it's up here. No, it's not up here yet, I guess. Here we go. Okay. It's up there now. And to the inhabitants of the school district of the town of Hampstead, New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs. And we're at the first session of the annual meeting deliberative session. That's where we are now. You're hereby notified to meet here tonight at the middle school, and tonight's Tuesday, February 5th. And we're going to look at warrant articles 2 through 5. And some of them can be amended, some of them can't be. Warrant articles that are amended will go on to the ballot amended. If not amended, they go as is. And a certain warrant article you just can't amend if they're prescribed by law. And after, what we're actually doing is we're preparing the ballot for the secret ballot session. And that's the second session, and that is, okay. And the second session is where we vote with secret ballot, and that's all the articles. And that will be done on Tuesday, March 12th, and we have at this school again, over in the gymnasium, and the time period for the voting is 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. And I've been asked to read something about the district profile here. It says, the Hampstead School District is located in Hampstead, New Hampshire, and includes 2 schools. We have the Hampstead Central School and the Hampstead Middle School. Currently, there are 851 students in grades pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. There are 461 students in grades 9 through 12 who are tuitioned to Pinkerton Academy in Derry. Pinkerton Academy is a public academy and the designated school of record for high school students in Hampstead. Now, okay, I'm going to go to the first article now. The first article is election of officers, and this one we can't amend or do anything. This goes right on the ballot. So I'm going to choose the following school officers, and as a school board member for a 3-year term. Since we can't do anything with that, I'm just going to move that forward to the secret ballot, because we can't amend that or do anything with that. It just goes on the ballot. Article 2. Article 2 is the bond issue. Let me read that. Article 2, bond issue, Hampstead Central School repair, renovation and renewal project / 20-year bond. Shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate the sum of $7,994,500 for the Hampstead Central School repair, renovation and renewal project, and authorize the issuance of not more than $7,994,500 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and authorize the district to issue and negotiate such bonds and notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, to apply for, accept, and expend any state or other aid that may be available for said project, and further raise an appropriate and additional sum of $190,980 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. And if this goes to the ballot, it's required a 3/5 majority, a supermajority, to get passed. And as a recommendation of the school board, 5-0, and I assume the last 0 is abstaining. Is that what that means? 5-0-0. So I'm going to ask someone from the school board to move this article forward.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, there's a second, first and a second. So I understand, Karen, you are going to address this article? Who's addressing this article?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay. I recognize Karen Yasenka to speak to the article.
This is our bond presentation. Tonight, we're going to move forward and have the construction team speak to this plan. There'll be plenty of time for questions and answers afterwards, but I want to get this presentation on the floor. So right now, I'd like to introduce Craig Jones from Dennis Myers Architect, and he will begin the presentation for us. So,
Craig is not,
thank you.
he's not a voter in Hampstead, but I'm going to recognize him because he has important information that we need to make a decision.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here again. I'm, again, Craig Jones with Dennis Myers, the Architects. And we were hired in summer of 2017 for an assessment and a conceptual design for the Hampstead Central School. So that's where we started in this process. The first thing that we do is we look at existing conditions. It's an assessment, and we're planning for the future. We're looking for tomorrow. We're looking at tomorrow. And it's interesting, when we think of tomorrow, my in-laws have 2 great ways that they use tomorrow. They say mañana. They're saying mañana, let's do it tomorrow, or let's put it off till tomorrow. So obviously what we want to do is we want to be looking forward to tomorrow. We want to be doing what is impactful for tomorrow in a positive way. So with the existing conditions report, we looked at 4 major categories as we went through the building, looking at deficiencies and other upgrades that needed to be done. And they fell into the categories of safety and security, into code upgrades, into building efficiency, and space deficiencies. And I'll kind of go through a few of these areas just to give you an idea. There's a much larger report, but I think it speaks to the whole as we look through these. In terms of safety and security, the exterior of the building has at least 10 access points. These are areas that need to be secured for today's way that schools are vulnerable. So this is one of the areas that we looked at, is all of these access points around the building. Again, with the access, this is one area. At the very front of the building, we have the main entry that has the office on the upper level. And it's really difficult for visitors to get into the building, and it's very difficult for any of the staff to allow the visitors into the building in a manageable way. So this is one of the areas that we identified that needed better access control. A second area that we looked at was building requirements and building code requirements. And when we're talking about building code requirements, we're primarily talking about fire safety and life safety. So building code is, for the most part, looking at how do you protect the occupants in the building, and these are a number of the deficiencies that we found, as well as use of the building for bathrooms and that type of thing. So there are non-compliant railings that are just safety as you're walking through the building. There's one non-compliant stair in the 60s wing that doesn't have wide enough egress access. If a fireman was to have to carry a child out of that building, it isn't figured up to today's code standards. There are more restrooms that are required throughout the building, and drinking fountains, and then of course the big one that we've all noticed is that the fire sprinklers have not ever been installed. And you know, new buildings today are required to have fire sprinklers. Fire sprinklers have just never been installed in the Hampstead Central School, and that's one that would fall under that code category. The next area is building efficiency. And when we looked at building efficiency, for the most part, the building is in pretty good shape, except for any part of the 60s wing. The 60s wing was built with uninsulated masonry block, which means that in the summertime, when it's 90 degrees outside, it's pretty close to that inside. In fact, it can get hotter inside than it does outside with extra body temperature. In the wintertime, like we're experiencing now, if the outside face of the wall is at 0 degrees, the inside face of the wall is, you know, close to 20 degrees. And that's just not acceptable for any type of an education environment. It's really hard on learning. And so it's not just the masonry walls, it's also the windows, it's the roofs. They're not insulated to the proper value, and the roofs are in need of replacement as well. There's also fresh air intakes on the 60s wing that it's right where the drop-off is for the kids. So any of the fumes that are being exhausted from the vehicles, that's being sucked right into the school classrooms. So the heating and ventilation system is something that also needs to be upgraded. The next category was the space deficiencies, and space deficiencies we're looking at what the state standards are and what the school has set for its own target. So preschool has targeted 15 students per grade or per class per room. Kindergarten, 18 students, and grades 1 through 4, we want to be able to have 20 to 23 students per class. And the way it's set up currently, that's not possible in all rooms. I'll point you to these 3 undersized classrooms that are in an older section of the building. It's in the 40s wing. They are about 300 square feet below the standard, so you know, quite a bit smaller. They shouldn't be cramming or shouldn't be putting as many students into those classrooms. It's not a safety violation, but it certainly is standards that are not being met for today's educational needs. There are also some formerly closets that are being used for instructional space for special education. We don't think that that's appropriate for any student. So that's one of the deficiencies that we earmarked as well. Then finally, on the exterior of the building, there are also some site improvements that could be made. That kind of a cramped area where the drop-off and pickup are located. There are some pretty easy moves to make that a better space, and again, that was one of the deficiencies that we noticed. So in terms of process, as we've looked at this, we had to recognize that we were not the first that looked at this. This has been going on for years and years. In fact, the portables were brought in as classrooms over 20 years ago. Formerly, a process to design and come up with a new building were started over 10 years ago. So this process has been going on and on through numerous studies, numerous facility assessments, the steering committees. Your school board has been working hard on that over a long, long time. And it always reminds me that when you're told that I'm doing something for your good, that's usually kind of a bad connotation. You say, I'm going to do something for your good. It isn't taken the right way. But I think we need to keep in mind that this is for the entire community's good, and there are also personal benefits as well. So just recognize that the community and the school board have been working on this together for over a decade, and they're trying to improve the educational needs of this community. We'll jump into the conceptual design, and this is where we get to continue with the tomorrows of not put it off till tomorrow, but this is a conceptual design of this is how we are planning for the future, for the tomorrow. I want to orient you just a little bit. The existing building consists of essentially 3 building programs. There's the 40s wing, there's a 60s wing, which is all this white roof area, and then an 80s addition, which is the rest of the school and gymnasium. And then you can also see where the portables have been on site. One of these portables have now been removed, and we're going to continue to remove those. And through that process, that meant that music was moved into the school. They're back on the stage. It just wasn't safe to have the students going between the school and the portables multiple times a day, and there were no restroom facilities in those portables either. In the new plan, you can see we still have all of the existing building components, and then we're proposing that there'll be site improvements, a new library, a music room, and there's a bank of restrooms in here as well. There'll be a cafeteria and community room. There'll be a courtyard space that's kind of an interior protected space. And then the main entry, which is more of a safety concern, but that gives the administration an eye on the front of the building. Looking at the renovated areas, I'm going to just point out some of the big ones that we would be addressing, and that would be turning the library into 2 classrooms. They originally were built to be able to be 2 classrooms. We'll turn those back into 2 third-grade classrooms. The 3 small rooms that were in the 40s wing, that would be divided into 2 right-sized classrooms. And so they can either be 2 classrooms, or they can be classrooms and a special education space to take the burden off of those closets in the lower level. There'll be expansion of the restrooms, and then this whole 60s wing, this is where we don't have any good insulation on the exterior of the building. That would get a completely new skin, which includes a fully exterior insulation and siding package with windows and roof with insulation, and then there'll be heating and ventilation installed as well. In terms of new construction then, any of these areas over here are new construction. And then the colored areas down here are some more of the renovations. I guess here we have the new administration area, and I'll go through this just a little bit in a little bit more detail. The cafeteria, which backs up to the gymnasium and to the existing kitchen, so that the kitchen can be reused. We don't need to build a new kitchen. It can just kind of mirror itself and be able to serve a new cafeteria space for the community and for the students. Then a music room, restrooms, and a new library space with some more external, a wide hallway that becomes another teachable area that they can teach within the hallways and hang up. It's like being able to have an extra lobby. And then above the kitchen, there'll be 2 new classrooms with some more circulation. We'll look at the administrative area. The new administration area would be added to the front of the building. It's this box here. In plan, you can see now we have 1 point of entry. Before you had to come in an entry down here and up the stairs and into the main offices. The main offices currently can be converted into district offices, and the administrative area is added on. Anything that's orange out here gives complete control at the front entry of the building, so they can see what's happening where the buses pull up, where parents enter, and what goes on behind them in these hallways as a transition space between the school and the gymnasium. In the back of the building, we have the new cafeteria and music room and library and classrooms above. And again, in plan, here's that cafeteria that currently the kitchen is in that location there. It will be mirrored so that the cafeteria can be served off the back side of that. There's an extra entry in here that can be opened after hours for the community to use. It would have its own separate entrance. The music room and the library would be making up the rest of that building area. And then, of course, there's an interior courtyard space as well. Then you can see the overall circulation. There's kind of a nice big circular pattern, and there's great access out to the drop-off, access to the playground, and then access to the main entry, or from the main entry. And this is the new rear drop-off that's in the same location that they're currently using, but now we have the new skin on the 60s building that's insulated and energy efficient, and there's a little bit of site work that would take place back here to make that a little bit more, a little bit easier to use in the back. So when we look at doing any kind of a building project, it's nice to see what the categories are, where the money is going, where the effort is going, and you can see that some of it obviously has to go to the remodel and code deficiencies, some site infrastructure, the district-wide solutions, which we can accommodate all of the district IT in the building, and we have some safety, a decent chunk with safety and security, but really the bulk of the improvements are to learning environments, and that's really what the school's about. So we're happy that it's able to occur that way, because sometimes all the money has to go just to make the code upgrades, and we actually get a nice chunk that goes into the learning environments. So when we look at the numbers, we have the wrong slide here, but it's the right slide. It just it moves some things around here. I'll interpret it for you, so I apologize. So we have hard costs, which are basically all the construction costs, which is $6.9 million. We have soft costs of $750,000, which are the architectural and engineering fees, management fees, some commissioning just to make sure all of the equipment is working properly, and then a contingency which covers any unforeseen conditions, or maybe there's some money left over at the end to do other things, but it typically covers things that can't be foreseen in the initial design. And that gets us to a number of just under $8 million. It's nice to know what the impact is going to be, and I think we'll talk further about this, but if you look at a typical home of $200,000, it works out to just about $12 a month. If you own a $200,000 home, that's what the impact is going to be on you as the tax owner. And we have all of these numbers, and we could probably calculate more. If you have any questions about how much this might impact your taxes, then just ask somebody. Ask one of us or get a hold of the school board, and we can get that information for you.
Okay.
That's the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Mr. Moderator, with your permission, at this time, for matter of sequencing, I would like to ask Mr. Collins to come up to the podium.
Go ahead, Dillard. Dillard's
he-
not a registered voter, but we're going to allow him to speak because he has expertise we need.
He
As
is
he's the
in that
principal.
building every day and has some very important information to offer. And when Mr. Collins is through, then we will open it up to the floor for questions, and your questions may be answered by either Mr. Baroni from Trident, who is our owner's project manager, or from Bonnet, Page, and Stone's representatives, Keith and Barry. So that's how I'd like to proceed going forward. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Yasenka, and to the board. I thank you for inviting me to speak to the community. Many people in the building here know me because I came and worked right up there, starting back in 1981 as a music teacher. I have a bunch of my music students out there and a couple sitting up here on the board. So having spent about 4 decades here, there's a lot that's happened. I joined the Central School Principal's Office as the assistant principal in '97, and then in '99 as the principal. Therefore, I can say to the students, I've been the principal since the last century. I've seen a lot happen in all those decades. So tonight, the board asked me to speak directly to the program needs because I do spend a lot of time in that building. To begin with, I'm very confident to say that all at the Central School and the families, everybody works hard to make sure that we make the best of what we're given to work for the students. The success of our students, they start with the family, and they're enhanced by the teaching at our school. We do have a tremendous staff that make do with whatever's there. It's a joy to work with all those families and the staff. Continuing down that same path, we worked hard to make the most of a facility that is simply good, but not great. Again, I want to say that again. Good, but not great. Because the structure works with lots of modifications, but it's not comparable to what you'd find in other communities, especially those communities that have gone through anything to do new or recent capital improvements, and recent in my mind is in the last decade or so. There's a lot of history with the Central School building at the same time. It actually came in 3 major construction phases. It actually was, there's that other one, the portables years. I don't even consider that part of the structure. So the original structure, 1940s, came along. It was built with those small classrooms that were designed what you thought of 80 years ago. But today, we still use those small classrooms, but I have to live with the state rules that says I can only put so many students in those rooms, which is 18. The building had an addition put on in the 1960s. It was built with great ideas, nice sizable classrooms. However, it was built with a concrete block wall, nothing like we would see today when insulation is the norm. The result is that we have 60-year-old classrooms that cause those boilers to burn excessive oil to compensate for heat loss through the heating season. And then we get the opposite effect in September, May, June, occasionally more, because 8 of those classrooms are still in use today, and the air quality is simply awful on those days. Those rooms get very, very hot. In the 1980s, the community stepped up and said, let's put a big addition on. So 30 years ago, this year, we're opening a time capsule pretty soon, by the way, from the kids. Exciting. But 30 years ago, they built a wonderful addition. If you've been, that's most of the classrooms. It's a very good learning environment. And then the portables years, 1994, 1999, and 2000. It was considered a temporary solution. Penny Williams did an interview with me back in 2000. Mrs. Graspall and I talked about this temporary solution. I have the article if you would like to see it. And through the years, they served as grade-level classrooms and other things, but due to age, security, enrollment trends, we just simply said we can't use them for student instruction anymore. Today, there's a couple of them still there at the Central School. One of them is used strictly for storage. We turned the heat way down, so we're not wasting a lot of energy there. The other unit actually is used for workspace for some of our staff, and we have a little meeting space in there. It's not used as often, but no kids' pieces. And you've probably noticed that one of them's been moved across the street. St. Anne's was very interested in taking the facility and between the parish and others. They renovated it, and there's a wonderful food pantry that takes care of members of our community. So the reality is that Central School as a whole does not support the classrooms and the programs necessary now, and certainly not going on into the 21st century. It's time to make changes to meet the needs of your youngest children. 5 big points: safety in the building, teaching space, especially for those small spaces like special education, academic supports, climate control, technology, and class size concerns. We do not have enough small learning spaces. We have strategically repurposed closets to become small teaching spaces, and one of them is a copy room. The climate controls of the building are not working in the 60s wing because they can't compensate for what's going on there. The building has been retrofitted with lots of technology, but that has stressed some space needs. We need a new computer lab that is connected to our library. That's the way it's done these days. Enrollment is starting to grow again, creating stress on class size. So how did we get here? There's a lot of reasons why we got here. Again, going back 30 years ago was the last time we did something. Think about what's happened in 30 years. Try to think of your own world 30 years ago. Education changed. Special education law started to change the way we do schools. Specifically at the Central School, we had 1 special education teacher, and we contracted some of the support services. Today, to support the needs of our students, we have 5 special education teachers, 2 speech pathologists, 2 occupational therapists, and other support services that are necessary. We ramped up our intervention systems because not all struggling learners need to be part of special education supports. Some of our grade-level classrooms that were used 30 years ago have been repurposed to take care of those programs. So this is why when you walk through our school, you see cubicles in a classroom to create multiple little teaching stations. This is also the reason those closets are now instructional spaces. Let's talk about technology. In the late 1980s into the 90s, everybody changed with technologies. I had an Apple II GS. Things changed. Our schools have changed with that. Naturally, they became part of every classroom of our school. It's in your pocket right now, probably. At Central School, we've got them all over the schools, all kinds of devices. It's fully wired. Technology cut into the classroom space. First of all, it cut into the library and cut a corner out of our library to create a hub where everything gets wired back to. We're also using one of our classrooms that could be a grade-level classroom as a computer lab. Community grew. I've watched Hampstead grow. When I got here, there were 200 students at the Hampstead Central School. Actually, it was 199, according to Bob Little. The community has grown since then. Continuing right along, you built this school here, which is beautiful. This is a beautiful school. But now it is showing its age. To learn more, you should take a look at our capital projects list. That's been discussed a lot with this board. I urge you to take a look at that or ask more questions. I'll give you one example. The board spent an awful lot of time trying to figure out, do they put into the budget a paving project, which is very costly for this building. And that's just one piece of that list. In 1994, they started adding temporary solutions. A portable came, and then that went on and created its own history. School security is very different today. You can't ignore this. Our concept of security continues to change because of tragedies and other things that have happened around our nation. I can mention the name Columbine or Sandy Hook, and you can probably name other schools that have gone through tragedies. You can also think about where you were on September 11th in 2001. I was sitting at the Central School trying to figure out what we're going to do for our kids that day. Here in Hampstead, we tighten up many layers since all of these things have been changing the way we do business. A recent example is we worked with New Hampshire Homeland Security. With their guidance support, we qualified for some grant funds. The board gave us additional funds, and we made accommodations to address some of the problems. But the bigger problems can only be addressed through a design. So where are we today? As I shared a year ago, there is a trend, and I'll remind you what that trend is. The homes that have children now had children that are sitting on the board now, or they're sitting out in this audience, or their parents at the Central School, because they've moved back into town or bought their parents' home, and they have little kids in those schools. The net result is that we have more kids at our schools, and you're still seeing a growth. Central School had 430 students 2 years ago. Last March, when I spoke, we had 470. Today, I walked out of the school, there were 482 students. That means we picked up 52 new students without additional classroom space, actually less, because we closed the portables in that time. The administration, staff, and school board made important decisions over the past couple of decades about class sizes. This town has always maintained that as an importance, but we're running out of options to continue to make those modifications. Last year, the problem was in grade 3. This year, the problem's in grade 2. Next year, I'm projecting we'll probably looking at 3rd and 4th grade, somewhere hovering around our maximums. The Central School building has those ventilation and climate systems that do not meet the expectations of a 21st century school or public building. I can give you I can point to 10 specific classrooms that have constant heat, cold, or ventilation issues that interrupt learning. Parents have actually come to school and brought their children home. Most of those classrooms are in the 1960s wing. As an example, we had 8 classrooms on those very hot days last fall that were hovering around 90 degrees temperature in the classroom. It's just a few degrees different from what was just outside the window. So what we did is we took some of those kids out of those rooms in the hotter afternoon, put them in the library, which meant hundreds of other kids didn't have access to their library. We continue to be challenged as we repurpose classrooms in small spaces. As an example, we have a library that's beautiful. I mean, lots of great things happening there. However, there's a ventures classroom in the back. I'd like to share an example of what I observed. I spent some time watching a ventures class the other day. It was wonderful. Great class. I couldn't help but notice I'm sitting watching children trying to learn, and I'm hearing a conversation from the librarian with a staff member, school business, talking about learning. And there was a couple of little girls just a few feet away near the stacks talking about what they were going to read. And then I had a flashback. Back in the 1970s, during my student teaching, I remember visiting an open concept school. I hope that also makes you realize that that wasn't a good part of education. The compromise is our library is now a major distraction to learning for some students. Central School does not have enough bathrooms. You heard that earlier. The most obvious problem is on the second floor. Here's some data. 300 students are typically on the second floor at any point during the school day. For all those students, there's one large bathroom for the boys and another for the girls. I'll just give you this one number. 150 little boys sharing a bathroom. Think that one through. One challenge that came from the portables when we moved music back into the building is we now hear those beautiful sounds coming out of the music room. Everything from African drumming to chorus to song. Everybody thinks it's wonderful unless you're the teacher on the other side of the wall that is adjacent to it. The downside of that space is we have a problem, but these guys have come up with a great idea to move things away. If we continue to keep music on the stage, we also have a problem with student egress, even though I think we found a solution that's acceptable. Again, good but not great. The safety entrance to Central School is a problem waiting to happen. We have many cameras now, automated locks in place, but that is not enough. Last year, I shared that the access to the gym and the cafeteria are easy targets for somebody with ill intentions. For everyone that's been to Central School in the last 6 months, you know we made a change, which means it's much more difficult to get into those lobbies. We spent thousands of dollars to improve the security and now have an improvement that is an incomplete solution. Another important improvement put in place this summer was the locked area upon entry. To get into Central School, you now have to walk up to a little box, talk to the little box, push a button, someone in the office talks back to you, and then they'll open the door for you. You can get into the school, but you can't go very far. You can go in the lobby and go up and down the stairs, but all the doors are locked up and down those stairs now. So by locking those doors, it's a secure area. That's great. However, we now have lost a main path for students to travel around their school. So the students are restricted on that front stairwell that they have to be escorted by a member of the staff that has the fob to get in and through those doors. So the educational space design proposal that was shown to you this evening has a lot of good solutions to this. So please, here's just a few things to add as I close out here. By relocating that main point of entry, the school will have a more efficient and inviting point of entry. Visitors can be greeted with an outdoor buzzer. We'll probably keep that. That's a staple in schools now. But a few steps later, you're going to talk to a human being, and they can actually greet you on through to the building. That's much nicer. We're going to move the nurse's office right next to the principal's office. Hallelujah. That's just wonderful. Bottom line, safer and more welcoming for those families. The dedicated music room is strategically located to account for chorus rehearsals, sound, performance areas. The current library will be repurposed into 2 grade-level classrooms, and the new library will have an intentional design, what we would expect in a 21st century library, such as technology, books, makerspace, classroom space, and proximity to the computer lab. That's part of the design. The number of core classrooms will address the class size issues by simply increasing the total of grade-level classrooms a little bit. We are currently using 22 classrooms for the grade levels K through 4. Then we have 2 dedicated preschool rooms. The new design actually has 2 more classrooms, a moderate gain, but gives us a little bit of room. So a future principal, I emphasize that, will have flexibility to take care of those things. Some of the small rooms will be repurposed or renovated to better meet the needs of instructions that require a small room. That's part of the design. The new cafeteria is great for the school as well as the community. You guys need another large space in this town because there's a lot that happens in this little town. We know the cafeteria and the gym at the Central School are overused, and that includes morning, day, night, weekend. One more space is what this community needs. The traffic at Central School, at that car loop out back, is really a fascinating place to visit. Many people avoid it intentionally. But the new design, again, accounts for what we need back there. I can't emphasize enough those climate upgrades that are in this design, how important they are. Redesigning the walls, windows, putting in heating systems is better for the students and the taxpayers. You're wasting money in that wing, and the students are not in an optimum learning environment. So please consider the proposal means to address the needs of children for many years to come. After 30 years, it's time to repair and renew Central School. Waiting 1 more year for an idea is not solving the problem. That's what's been going on. It's time to just go ahead and move forward. The need for a solution is today's problem. So I'll close with words attributed to Abraham Lincoln, one of my personal heroes. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dallas. I understand that the next speaker is going to be Jason Cipriano. He's going to address the tax impact for the bond.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. as we discussed in the presentation, and as the board has tried to do over the years that this project has been presented to the town, we've projected out the tax impact based on different values of homes in the town. And we try to do it at a couple of different points, 100,000, 200,000, and 400,000 to capture average home prices in the town. And so we present that to you so that way you can get a perspective of both the monthly cost as well as the annual cost on the bond. And as was discussed, it's about just under $12 per month for a $200,000 home. And you can see the additional, depending on more or less on the home value. So, thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Now, I think that's it for the presentation by the school board. Does anybody want to speak, or does anybody have any questions in regards to Article 2, the bond issue? And if you do, I'm going to ask you to go to that microphone, identify yourself, and then you can speak. No one wants to speak? Joe Guthrie, you're recognized to speak.
I looked around and didn't see anybody put their hand up, so here I am again. Seems like you could get this brochure, and I think you pretty much almost did it and just repeat it every year. I think the principal was right when he said you can't put off what you have to do today because tomorrow it's going to grab you. And I just like to, I really feel that this whole issue, unfortunately, is just about money. There's no question, I don't think, in my mind, and I think in most people's mind, at least more than half of the people in Hampstead realize there is a need. I mean, if you just look at the deficiencies that are listed, those alone, I mean, they're not going to go away. I have a kind of a vested interest because I'm going to hold the school committee's feet to the fire somewhat if we get this, and you let us get some programs in here for us. And that's, you know, how I feel about what we should be doing for our seniors. And I think for short term, I think we're depending on the school system and the library to give us at least a hand up in providing some programs for our seniors. So I like the fact that that's one of the bullets here. But we're sending our kids into a school without a sprinkler system. I mean, I don't have any children. I don't have any great-grandchildren, in fact, in Hampstead. But I have great-grandkids, and I wouldn't want them to go to school without a sprinkler system. And, I mean, undersized classroom, we can argue about that, how big a classroom should be, but, you know, if you're going to fix the school, that's the time to fix it. And I just think that the need has been expressed. And I would suggest to you that it's all about money. And if you look at the almost $8 million, that really takes you back. I mean, that's more than the cost for a house today. And some of us are having to buy homes that are $300,000 and $400,000 homes, just a regular home. Now, but $8 million, I mean, nobody's going to vote for $8 million. But I'd suggest that the way that the school has broken it down on a monthly rate. I mean, I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. I'm fortunate enough to live in a low-value home, but relatively speaking, the impact on me is going to be as much as it is for somebody who lives in a $300,000, $400,000 home and can afford that house. So I think we all have to look at what we can spend and whether or not you can afford. Well, I got to pick it up for my eyeglasses here. Looks like almost $4.50 for a $100,000 home, almost $9 for a $200,000 home, and almost $18 for a $400,000 home. I know that's a long period of time, but I mean, I think that's what we ought to focus on. And I'll tell you, we've got to get a bigger turnout. And those people who are sitting home, tonight, I hope they're watching TV, because there's not too many of them here, unfortunately. But we live in a bedroom community, and our parents come home. It's a hard time to get people to come out to vote. And I think just there's not enough mom and dads for the central school to come out to do this. We got, what did we get, 51% last time, I think? Do you remember what the number was? Something like 51%? That means a majority of the people recognize that this stuff is not going to go away and that we really ought to do something about it. And if we can look at our own budgets, I'd hope that enough of us can come up with the dollars in our budget, and we can afford to go forward and do this, because if we don't, as the principal said, it's just going to deteriorate. We're going to be back, and maybe you'll be so embarrassed not to come back next year. I don't know how you do it, but you might have to wait 4 or 5 years, and I don't know how long the list will be. But we're just putting off what we're going to have to do eventually. So I don't know, you know, I wish I knew what the answer was. But if I could have just a minute regarding that, we got a couple of bills up in the House, and they are going to allow people to vote absentee ballots for any reason. Now you have, it's kind of a close call on what you need for a reason, but I suggest that anybody who's at home taking care of their little boy and little girl, that's a legitimate reason for getting an absentee ballot. And if you get in touch with me, I'll get you an absentee ballot. And people should not be staying home just because there's some hardship or some, I don't even like to give it a name, but like I said, we're a bedroom community. Our people are used to letting somebody else do their work for them. And I think that's the way it is. So I challenge the people out there that didn't vote last time and recognize that we do need this, if for no other reason that we're going to have to do it sometime. And you're going to have to pay the bill sometime. Now, at my age, I don't have to worry about it too much because maybe 10 years I don't expect to be around, but there are a lot of people that are going to be around. And just because your child is not in the central school is not a reason not to take care of a real, one of our gems in the town. We don't have too many public buildings. We only have 2 schools to take care of. I think we ought to take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2? Just go to the microphone, state your name and where you live.
Hi, I'm Diana Abbey-Rad. I live in Hampstead. So I just briefly want to share a perspective that's helped me. So recently there was a sample poll done in a community Facebook group called Hampstead, New Hampshire Community Connection. And I mean, it was a small sample, but still the question was, why do people, there were about 4 options, why do people move to Hampstead? And the majority was for the schools. So I would invite people to look at how it can be a win-win, a win for the town, investment long-term, a win for the school, for the teachers, for the welfare of our children. And if we look at, excuse me, I'll just get my thoughts. So do the quality of our schools equal security of home value? And I just feel like that is a win-win for everybody to consider. Like, it's not going away, the problems that have been presented for the school. Are we just going to keep putting Band-Aids on until eventually, who knows, a security tragedy happens, or just like the kids are in extreme heat or extreme cold? Like, what's the solution for the people that are voting no? Like, it just seems like it's been a revised plan over the years. It's been cut back, it appears, and you know, it just seems like from my understanding, it just sounds like a quality investment that's going to make the school solid, possibly for another 50 years. I can't quite remember the estimate that I'd heard. And then just to wrap it up, I'm also not sure if people are aware that there are like tax exemptions through the town. You know, if you're married, if you're single, if you earn under a certain income, if you're a veteran, if you're, you know, you just need to go to the town hall and you file by April 15th. So there's, you know, so there's those options. And then finally, so just a little bit about my personal history. I asked around a lot of like before we moved to Hempstead, like schools was a priority. And it just had a really good reputation for the value of a house. And my son is graduating Central School this year, my youngest. My oldest is in Pinkerton now. And I have been so moved by the quality and the dedication of the teachers that I just feel it takes a village to raise a child. And those teachers have been my village. And I feel like, how can we give back? Like, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a community to care about our schools. It takes a community to care about our schools. And yeah, I mean, just on maybe a final note, you know, it's been presented, the admin office should ideally be in the front of the building. Like, yeah, that's just, you know, I mean, obviously all the other like important needs that were mentioned as well. So, and yeah, and just let's try and increase the voter turnout. It seems like it's in the early 20s. Like, talk to your neighbors, bring friends to the polls, like, educate each other, just, you know, take a tour. And one final thing. If people aren't aware, it's a bond over 20 years, which I feel like helps spread the responsibility for people moving to Hempstead, moving out of Hempstead. Like, it's over 20 years, like it's a shared responsibility. And I just feel like our children and our teachers deserve it. And I'm so grateful for the dedication of the teachers, and that's my passion for why I'm speaking right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jen Abbott. I live 132 Main Street. One, I'm nervous. I'm going to try not to stumble over myself. Essentially, this has been up quite a bit, and so I've talked with my neighbors since I've moved here, trying to figure it out. I personally think that it's your right to vote and you have a choice. I ask that you be informed and make that choice based on fact, not assumption. So I do encourage all voters to do their best to find information to be an informed voter. But if you vote differently than me, that's fine, because we all have different values. Personally, I value education. I value being proactive. I would throw all the money in the world at education if I could and would. So that's where I stand. However, I know some people maybe don't have the same beliefs as I, but I do think, talking with the community, there are some very clear things that people are in support of. People do feel that children shouldn't be in classrooms where the temperature is so drastic, where it's very, very cold or very, very hot. I think people do agree that our children in the kindergarten wings should not be inhaling fumes from car exhaust, that there's no filter there. I think quite a few people believe there should be a fire sprinkler system. I think some people get annoyed that you can't walk in and find an office, especially visitors. I think that people would enjoy more bathrooms. I think people would, especially me personally, because kids need to wash their hands. And who here can agree that there are a lot of illness that goes through a central school? And if they could wash their hands more, because kids are lazy, and if it's hard, they're not going to do it. And if they had more sinks, they might actually wash their hands more often. That's just me, but also just the fact that they should be able to use a bathroom easily. But these are just some things that I think a lot of families could agree with. Now, looking at this plan, some people may not do their due diligence, and they're going to say they're asking for too much. We don't need a new library. We don't need a new awesome cafeteria. It doesn't have to be perfect. And so my question for you, because I've asked this question personally, is why is it important or in our best interest to make this school the way we would like? Why is this cost effective? Caitlin, I'm asking you if you could.
Recognize Caitlin to speak.
I have two, great. Thank you. One, I would, after I'm done, maybe having some of our construction people just give a quick answer on it. But really what it comes down to is this is the most cost-effective way to do this. As we've talked about, we're not even just planning for 10 years down the line. We're doing that as well, but we're also meeting the needs of tomorrow being literally tomorrow. From what Mr. Collins said, I think I'm probably going to reiterate a lot of what he already pointed out, but we are out of options and we're out of space. So doing this all now is really what needs to be done now, rather than splitting it up and doing little pieces over time. It's going to cost us more, and that's what it comes down to. I don't know if we can recognize Jason.
Someone else want to be recognized? You want Jason recognized to speak?
So, I would just add a couple of things, and actually specific to the couple of points that you mentioned is, one, with regard to the library, it's not so much, we didn't enter it into with the goal of creating a new library as much as the library was never a library. It was 2 classrooms, and we converted it to a library. So from a construction standpoint, it was easiest to convert it back to those classrooms and then have a library as part of where we would have, if we had left the library where it was, we'd still need those classrooms, and so we'd have to build them. So it was easier to convert it back. Regarding the cafeteria, we don't have a cafeteria. We have a gym that we use as a cafeteria, and for the middle part of the day, anybody that's ever been over to the Central School, we have gym class in half a gym for a good chunk of the day, because we've converted the other half into a cafeteria. That's where the kids are eating. So we don't actually have a cafeteria. We have a gym that we repurpose for a cafeteria for a good chunk of the day. This is to give us a cafeteria so that we can actually use the gym for its intended purpose for the entirety of the day. So some of these things are, I've looked at some of these things as very practical. When you start thinking about it, you're like, oh yeah, we actually only use half the gym because we can't use the whole, because the other half is being used as a cafeteria. So some of them are really on a very practical level.
Recognize, Madam Chairman.
Also, talking about the rooms, people keep talking about the music room. I don't know if people really realize that we at Central School never had a dedicated music room. It started out on the stage. There was never a room dedicated for music and chorus. It was on the stage, and then when we could no longer use the stage, it was moved to the portable. When we brought the kids in, it's now back up on the stage. So even when the addition was built in '87, we never had a music room. So that's something that we really need to look at. It's not like, we've never had one, so we really need a dedicated music room in there for that. And I just want to mention that to Mr. Guthrie's remark. I don't think this board, or the board coming up, we're not going to go away. I don't think we can go to sleep for 4 to 5 years and bring this program back and try to get this passed. One reason is because the board really has a responsibility to make sure that our kids are in a safe environment that's conducive to learning. And whether it gets voted down or not, we're going to be back again, because we have a responsibility to keep trying to do what's right for the kids in the town. The only thing that's going to change is the price is going to keep going up. And at some point, people in town are going to wake up and say, we have to do something. So it's really better, do it now at this cost, because I don't think you can make everybody happy. The people who are voting no have been voting no for the last 10 or 12 years, and the price was never right. When it was $4 million, it wasn't right. When it was $6 million, it wasn't right. When there were 4 classrooms and a music room, it wasn't right. There's always going to be a population in this town that just aren't going to agree with the fact that we need this. So we're going to have to keep moving forward with the design plan that we have, that we know that is workable and that is needed for the kids in the town. And this one especially brings in the whole community. Residents, seniors will be able to use this And so we're going to go forward with this, even next year. I don't see any changes to this, because this is really an optimum design, a flexible design that can be modified for different uses over the years. So I just wanted to mention that. If anyone thinks we're going away, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the design plan's going to change. As I said, the only thing that's going to change, it's going to cost more when it happens. Okay, thanks.
You want to speak further, ma'am?
No, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is this is the most efficient way to meet the needs of both the school as well as the community. Sound good? And I would just add that I think sometimes people don't quite understand how the bond works. The most this bond would ever cost is, let's say you live in a $400,000 home, is going to be $23.16. That's for the first year. And then it's going to drop each year until it's the lowest amount. On average, you'll spend $17.82 a month. So I'm not good at math, but that's like $300. And I think getting an amazing school to meet and match the amazing teachers as well as staff that we have with our students is definitely worthwhile. So that's all. And I would just encourage, I know this isn't about the bond, but maybe when the budget comes up, if you could be able to explain the increase in terms of a monthly amount.
We'll talk about that when that warrant article comes up. Anybody else want to speak to the bond issue, the 20-year bond? Jay DeMondo, you've been raising your hand.
Hi, Jay DeMando, Hempstead. I have a question about the design. If you can help me follow this, then I'll understand it better. According to what I'm looking at this, by moving the library into the new library, we're going to be gaining 2 classrooms, and we'll gain 2 classrooms over the music room. Is that right?
The two new,
Caitlin, you recognize this speak?
sorry.
So those are the
That's
4 new
associate
classrooms. We, right?
Can we have,
That's what we're
If
getting.
you want to
And-
speak, you have to come to the
They'll
microphone.
do it.
Pardon me?
If someone wants to speak, they have to go to the
Okay.
microphone and be recognized.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, I think we'd like to answer your question, Jay.
Sure,
I think he's the most qualified.
works for me.
So there will be 2 new classrooms over top of the library,
Yep,
and there will be 2 classrooms gained by moving the library
right.
to its additional space. And then there's just some other shifting around, but those are essentially the 2 new classrooms,
Right.
or the 4 new
The
classrooms.
4
that
new
we're doing.
classrooms. And when we were in Hampstead at our largest population, we brought in 3 portables, which had 2 classrooms in each trailer. So that's 6 classrooms we just got rid of. Mr. Collins just got up and was talking about the central school and was saying how the population is starting to increase. Now, when the portables left, we got rid of 6. If we do this, we're gaining 4 of those 6. We're still short. So I don't see how this is going to be the answer for years to come. Do you think we're going to need another addition if population still increases?
We looked
I'm
at,
talking,
well,
I'm not talking like the classroom for a music room or the classroom for a library, because those are specific.
right, but you have to remember that a whole portable was being used for music, so 2
No,
classrooms.
not in the beginning.
I'm talking about currently our most
Right.
recent, and
That's
for
true.
several years. Yes, if we can
However,
have,
when we were at our highest population, when we were talking about a 3rd school over at Depot Road, we had kids in every portable for classrooms.
we're gonna have
I think
Mr.
Mr.
Collins
Collins
speak.
would like to address your question.
Sure.
Good
I want
situation.
to point you to a couple of things in here that's happening. Those 3 undersized classrooms that I spoke in the oldest portion of the building,
Right.
those 3 rooms are going to become 2 rooms in the renovation design that's in there. So you can actually see that if you look at the
Right, and one of
the
them is a
schematic. So
classroom.
there's
One at a
a
time.
net loss of 1 classroom when I did that count. The second thing is, if you notice the classroom, which is actually the one directly across from the current central school office, you will see that classroom gets carved up because we needed to create a stairwell. So when I did that number that said we have a net gain of 2, you said 4, you're right, but 2 of what was the 4 are disappearing because of, the carving up the 3 into 2. That's a net loss of 1 of them. And the classroom, if you look at it, it's at the corner of the courtyard. You can see if you're looking at that design in the lower schematic, it's got the purplish color there.
Is that, how big is that?
That is currently a
enough?
first grade classroom, and what'll happen is you're carving a standard hallway through it, and then the remainder of that's gonna be 2 small instructional spaces that'll be used for however we decide is important at that time.
Right, but not a classroom, so it's
Correct.
still
It would not
short.
be a classroom.
Okay.
So that's a net gain of 2 classrooms.
Yeah.
And back to what you were saying, yes, there were 6 classrooms that were in the portal that were being
Yeah,
used,
yeah.
but our population was around 500 and, I'm going
huge,
to, off the
yeah.
top of my head, somewhere in the vicinity of 560 to 570. So we had significantly more children spread out in those portables.
Right,
And you were right that
it's
music
going
was.
back up, you
Yes.
said.
Well, I don't think the projections suggest we're going to go there. If you look out, it does not suggest that.
Okay. I was just wondering if you foresee an addition on top of this to accommodate those classrooms that were not.
No.
Okay. And I just want to remind the board that I think in the town, if we should all work together, and if we had supported the citizens petition 3 years ago for the sprinklers and for fixing the wing, at least that would be done by now. I know the whole addition wouldn't be, but it would have been something. And I think rather than campaigning against it, because it wasn't a school thing, just work together. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue?
Mr. Moderator?
Go ahead.
I'll just
Jason,
speak
you're
to-
recognized to speak.
Yeah, so I'll just speak to the point, because we did have this discussion, and I think for those that are, relatively new to this process, maybe just getting involved and looking at Article 2, I just highlight a couple of things like that we have come up over the years. Is one, the initial proposal that we brought forward for the original Article 2 several years ago was significantly more than this, and so over time we've actually scaled back what we've done, and from a design perspective, pretty significantly to really get it down to what we absolutely had to have. The other thing that we did in recent years is that we went to a 20-year bond to lessen any one-year impact on any of the taxpayers. So we heard from taxpayers that a 10-year bond maybe was too much of a tax impact, on an annualized basis, and so we looked at it and we went to a 20-year bond. So that was another change. When we went to the 20-year bond, the question that the board asked at the time when we were evaluating it was, to Jay's point was, and Mr. Murphy, actually, we had this discussion, I think, last year or the year before, was would there then be a need for another bond while we're still paying this one off? And based on the NASDAQ projected enrollments moving forward, and obviously there's some variability the further out you get, but based on the projected enrollments, we felt like 20 years we could get out of this bond. Now, obviously, there could be a massive population explosion that no one sees coming, but based on the most current projections that we have, we felt like the 20-year bond we would be covered in that. And then the final thing was the question about doing it as the petition had asked, sort of in a piecemeal format, where you do the sprinklers and maybe the security piece. And one of the things that we heard from our construction folks last year is they went into it and they discussed how it's really the most expensive and least efficient way to do these kinds of things. If you were doing a renovation to your home or if you wanted to put an addition on your home, you don't do it one room and then stop and then next year come back and put another room on. The most efficient way is to package it together for economies of scale, for construction fees, and for a lot of other reasons that were explained. And that was really the genesis of that one, was that it was not an efficient way, and it was not responsible for us as we looked towards the taxpayers to do that, because we knew it would be the most expensive way to get this work done.
Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? Mr. Blaska. Mr. Blaska, the elder. I see the youngers over there, too.
Yeah, he's here also. I think one of the things that some people may be not recognizing is that this is a physical asset of the town. We spend money to repair our roofs in our homes. We put new kitchens in, we put new floors in, we put tires in our cars, new tires on our cars, we fix the brakes, we fix the exhaust systems, we take care of all those things on a regular basis. We don't wait, well, some of us do, Don't wait till they've completely collapsed, and then, of course, we're stuck with a big bill, which is what I, as someone who is now on Social Security, don't want to see in the future. I'm really concerned that this is we're going to kick it down the road. We've been kicking it down the road for at least 10 years, and it's not getting any cheaper, and it's not going to get any cheaper. And just one little point, I think, on that issue of the citizens petition a few years ago. I believe, Mr. Mondo, that you actually voted on the board to vote for the one that we had as a board position. So I don't know why we'd want to vote for the citizen position if we actually supported if you actually supported what the board did. So anyway, it's just a comment on what happened in the past. So I really hope that we do that, and in fact, for the baby boomers like myself, I hope that we follow behind it. I've never put any children in the school system. I do have grandchildren in the system, and I do have a grandson who sits in a closet getting special ed, some speech therapy, so I'd hate to see that continue. And I hope that the greatest generation steps up to that name of greatest generation and votes for this.
Thank you, Mr. Plaska. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue?
Oh, the bond issue?
That's what we're talking about.
Oh, sorry. I think the fact that it's 20 years and it brought the cost down from the last time, is what's important. You know, you sit back and you take a look at this. Some of these, for people who may have children, let's face it, a $400,000 home, that's 2 lift tickets at Loon, if you go to Loon, or 2 tickets to the Red Sox and a couple of brews and maybe a hot dog, and parking. So it's really, you know, that's really not a lot of money over a whole year. So I think it's good. I think it's a good deal for 20 years.
Thank you, Mr. Plaska. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? I see a couple of hands raised. Why don't you identify yourself and tell us where you live in Hampstead?
I'm Mike Fleming, and I live at 16 Pentucket Drive. So I'm new to the community. When we were looking for community, we were looking for schools, safe environment, and location to work. And so looking at our schools, we looked at several other communities in the area where we drove up to the school and we sat and watched the schools. And as I watched some of the schools in the neighboring towns, I was like, you know what? I don't want my kids to go to that school. They were in really good schools, and so we moved to this community for the schools. And as the schools start to deteriorate and they're not maintained, that's going to start impacting people's home value for their houses. So if they're planning on retiring and moving to sunny Florida where it's warm all the time, they may not be able to get the return on their house that they would like. And so it's important to also look at how that affects them as individual households, as well as the how it's affecting the community. And as I was looking through the numbers and looking at the efficiencies that would be gained, I was wondering what the projections were made on the operating cost of the school with renovations versus what their current operating costs are today.
Is that a question? You want to answer?
Question.
Someone want to answer that in our
Can
school board?
Craig speak to that? Yeah.
Caitlin, go.
We do have that.
This,
Has that.
Craig was going to answer that question for you.
Yeah, we looked at the efficiencies, and we had to make some guesstimates, obviously, but we can tell how much money is just going out the walls in that 60s wing. And if we bring the full efficiency back to the 60s wing and build a tight envelope, which we would in all of the new structures with new HVAC, it was going to be a very minimal impact in terms of operating costs. It was going to be very close to the same cost to heat and cool the building today as it would be in the future, just by gaining the efficiency. It's certainly going to be a little bit more, but we're going to be gaining a lot of efficiency. It isn't like we're building, we're building about a third bigger than what the school currently is. It's not that the operating costs are going to go up that much. They're just going up a minimal amount. Yeah.
So with the increased efficiencies and the increased square footage of the school, the operating costs will be minimal or about the same?
About the same, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, Kathleen wants to be recognized.
Just based off of last year's information, so this is last year's heating costs, electricity costs. It was estimated that it was $1 per square foot per year for the portable classrooms. The existing building costs 50 cents per square foot. And then once the improvements are completed, it would be 40 cents per square foot. And at that point in time, it was actually going to cost less to heat the larger school building than what we're currently paying.
Okay. And I have one more question. Has anyone done a risk analysis to see what kind of liable lawsuits we may be having kids in those cold classrooms or hot classrooms as a risk to the community for a lawsuit?
No, the
So-
answer is no, we have not done that.
Because that's an important thing to look at what kind of exposure we have as a community, right?
We will now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue?
You got someone in the.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Come on up. Please state your name and where you live in Hampstead.
My name's Chris Podesta, 15 Pentucket Drive. Most of what I was going to say has already been said. I agree with a lot of what the people said before me. I want to thank the board for voting 5-0 for this. Your words that we're going to be back here next year, I think that's great. Thank you, Mr. Collins, and all the work of the teachers at the school, because I have 3 kids. One of them is in kindergarten. He's been in the school for 2 years through preschool and kindergarten. We've been nothing but happy with the people and all the service that he's gotten there. But I think it's good people propping up that building, and I think the longer you wait, just like your house, if you wait 30 years to do your roof, you're going to get leaks. If you don't repair your car, it's going to break down on you, and the longer we wait, the worse it's going to be. I work for an urban high school in Massachusetts. This school will make the news. They closed because of gas leaks and lost heat and frozen pipes and issues that, frankly, I would be embarrassed to send my kids to that school, which makes me feel negligent for sending my kids to this school, not because of the people, but because of the building. So this is our 3rd year being here. We voted yes for this 2 years. We'll keep coming back year after year. We're going to vote for this because this should happen. And I guess I just had one question. I was curious why this vote requires a 3/5 vote instead of a simple majority vote.
Why does it require 3/5? Because we're buying, is that what your
Yes,
question?
yes.
Because we're binding the town into the future for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So it requires a supermajority, not just a majority. Because it's a bond, because it's good for the next 20 years. We're binding future voters.
Mr. Moderator, if
Go
I
ahead,
could just
Jason.
add something too. So the moderator is absolutely correct. So we're proposing this as a bond. The alternative, which actually the police station ultimately went through, was the alternative is to do it as a one and done, which would mean that the entire tax impact would hit the town in a single year. If we did that, then it would only require a 50% vote at that point, or 50% plus one. That's the majority vote. Now, the board has never endorsed that because the tax impact would be massive compared to the 20-year bond. So that's why it's a 2/3 vote, and that's why we're looking at a bond as opposed to a single-year impact.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll just close with, I would ask everyone here, everyone watching, get out there and vote. I can't think of a more worthy cause than the education of our children, and I can't thank the people that work at the school enough, because the people at the school are fantastic, and thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? Young Mr. Blaska. Or younger.
Don Blaska, Quail Run here in Hampstead. I don't have any kids in the central school anymore. My kids are in middle school or at Pinkerton. I'm supporting Article 2. Our town needs to continue to repair, renovate, and fix our infrastructure. As mentioned earlier, we don't have many public buildings, but we can't let them deteriorate. I saw something on social media this past week. Obviously, the Patriots won the Super Bowl, so I'm going to use a sports analogy. They had a picture showing that Gronkowski, Edelman, and Stoney Mitchell were watching TV, watching Tom Brady win his first Super Bowl 17 years ago. Gronk was 15, Edelman was 12, Stoney Mitchell was 6. When we did the 1989 addition to the Hampstead Central School, Tom Brady was 11. Let that sink in. He's 41 and just won his 6th Super Bowl. We shouldn't wait that long to do another addition to renovate and fix our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? I'll look closely, make sure there's nobody else left.
I would.
Go ahead.
I would feel bad if I did not say something tonight. I go to a lot of meetings at work, and I try not to restate what's already been said. But Joe talked about bigger turnout. 2018, school voting, 22.6% of the town voted. 2017, 25.12%. 2016 presidential election, 82.1% voted. 2012, 83%. So people can turn out when they want to. So what's my ask? Many people already spoke about it. I appreciate everybody coming here tonight. There's not a lot of people from town here tonight. And I know people could come. They have their reasons why they didn't. I'm going to ask you to participate. If you can share information with a neighbor, a spouse, a child that can vote, your neighbor, at the pickup line, at dance contest, please share it. Help us get out the vote. The second thing I want to talk about is Joe talked about money. It probably is about money. But what's the truth? It's not $8 million. It's $16 or $17 a month if you have a $300,000 house. That's really what it is. You heard other people talk about it. It's peanuts for mostly everybody in town. Third, what I wanted to say, people move here for the schools. We talked about schools and return on investment on your house. The schools in Hampstead or anywhere, they're not 9 to 3:30 babysitters. Are precious little beings. My little son and daughter, your kids and grandkids, they go to these schools. They want to be gym teachers and superintendents and lawyers and nurses and doctors and engineers. This isn't about resale value. It's about children and learning in an environment where they can learn. So, you know, voting is important, but participating, okay? Not just coming here tonight. Share it with your neighbor, talk to them, bring people to the polls, hand out literature, get involved, knock on a door. Because when we knocked on doors last time, it was the same 10 or 11 people that knocked on doors the time before that. We need people to participate and get this turnout from 22.6% a little higher so we can go over the 3/5 and bring this home for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, I'm the one who counts the votes. I think your statistics are a little low, although there's a much higher vote for presidential turnout for elections, that's for sure. But I think we have a little more than what you suggested as the percentage. But that's my own observations when I do the tally. So anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? Someone else want to speak? I see a hand raised down here.
Hi, I'm Sarah Shields. I live at 74 East Road. It seems a lot louder when you're up here, so hopefully it's not too loud back there as well. I just had a couple questions. I really appreciate the recent influx of information. Previous to just even a few months ago, I wasn't aware of all of the plan changes that were actually occurring. I knew it was something that was on the articles for the last few years that I've lived here. It's only been 3 years now. But I really want to say that I appreciate the influx of new information that's been available on Facebook. But I had some questions on if any other information may be available. For example, we have all these, they're kind of like blueprints, but mostly overall site examples for the changes. Is it possible to get the actual blueprint information so that somebody who was actually interested in that type of information would be able to look at things like square footage and different resource allocation as far as that was concerned?
Haven't they done it in a presentation?
This is the first presentation I was aware of and that I came to. So that was just a question that I wasn't sure if there was a possibility for that information to be available either on a website or it's just someplace.
Caitlin, you recognize to speak?
I don't know about specific blueprints. I would have to ask about how, we may not actually have specific blueprints yet with all of the details. However, the school district website has lots more information than just this.
Right.
Some of it is, a lot of it is based on these presentations, but the school district website has a lot of information on it. HampsteadSchools.net for anyone who, not any, oh, sorry, wait, I'm sorry.
There's a link, I think, on the town website, so.
There
but
is,
yeah.
there is, I'm sorry. I don't want to give you the wrong one. I don't know if Craig can speak to. Gino, sorry, I'm sorry.
Gino, you recognize to speak to answer this lady's question.
For those who don't know me, I'm Gino Baroni from Trident Project Advantage Group. We're the owner's project managers, ensuring that the taxpayer gets the most benefit out of your tax dollars. So we've been engaged to oversee the design and construction of this project. The school board wisely has chosen not to do full designs prior to getting approval. You don't want to spend whatever it is. If it doesn't get voted, you throw the stuff away. So what you have now is a very thoughtful, it's 2 years now this information is out there, very thoughtful consideration of what is needed. And it's in pretty good form if you look at this. You don't have physical drawings yet because it costs money to put those drawings together. So again, we've had other towns who have gone, spent the money, went to town vote, spent $1 million and said, the school's bigger than this, by the way, and the money's lost. So the way we're doing it right now really is to try to give you as much information in a conceptual point of view that shows you the adjacency, shows you the square footages, shows you the intent of what's going to be spent. If, and I hope it happens this year, it goes to positive vote, then the money becomes hard and we start spending the money wisely. So you're not going to see real blueprints right now.
Does anybody have?
I have one additional question that actually.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I went to school for architectural engineering, so I'm a nuclear engineer now. I do this stuff. My question is, has there been any thought into the design process for possible expansion later to address the concerns of others in the community? So when you go into a project like this, which is great, even just having the possibility of expansion later that wouldn't be as costly is something that I think is important to look at. Things like it would be tough to put classrooms above a music room and a cafeteria just based on the sound uses of the other areas, but I just wasn't sure if that was something that was looked at during the process.
I'm not a nuclear engineer, but I do have 2 degrees from MIT. So
There you go, you're good.
Right, so, and an MBA as well. So the issue becomes here, what is the cost benefit of planning for the future? How much can you put in the ground now anticipating a second story? Most schools will not do that because you have to move all the HVAC off the roof. They don't want to spend the money on the foundations because something may never occur. If you look at the study being done, as I said, 10 and 20 years out, the enrollment is not driving this. It is the programming and the way you teach now. There may be a slight increase in which we can accept that. We have that flexibility. But if you get another 100, 200 students, this blows apart. So there is flexibility, there is expansion potential, but it's not designed to go up right now because you would spend too much money in the structure. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Anybody have something new to offer regarding the bond issue? We're starting to rehash things. Does anybody have something new to offer that want to speak to the bond issue? I recognize Caitlin.
I just want to confirm, it is hampsteadschools.net. That's where everybody can go. It's all right there.
Mr. Moderator?
And I recognize Karen Yusenko to speak.
I would just like to give the other members of the construction team an opportunity to speak. If there's a question that hasn't been asked and there's something you think you might want to address, for instance, it wasn't mentioned this year, but it was mentioned last year, and it was very important to parents. I was wondering if one of you could come up and speak to the safety precautions that will be in place if this passes while construction is going on. Okay.
Good evening. My name's Keith McBay. I'm from Bonnet, Page & Stone with construction managers. I've got with me Barrett Salta, our vice president. So as we work through this, our charge initially to date has been to work on estimates and budgets. Pending a successful vote, we would continue to work with Craig and his team to assure that design matches available funds. And then as we get closer to construction, we'll develop what we call a site safety and logistics plan. And with that, we'll identify and separate the construction operations from the educational and recreational activities of the school, assuring that we've got a safe atmosphere there right through the process. We'll be doing background checks for everyone on site. We will work through hard fencing designated storage areas. Construction sites are fun and they're kind of an attractive nuisance, so we've got to separate our materials and activities from the educational end of things. We'll work on delivery timing and like that. And we'll work with your local law enforcement and fire through that process to be sure that while that construction activity is going on in your school, it's not only separate, but the building is safe for all the occupants during that time period.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk to Article 2 of the bond issue? You stood up, man. You want to talk? No. Just taking a break. Okay. See no one else that wants to speak? I don't see any raised hands. So what I'm going to suggest now, that Article 2 is hereby moved to the Tuesday, March 12th secret ballot. So go on to the next article. Article 3, the operating budget. That's going to come up on the screen up here. The operating budget. Shall the voters of Hampstead School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth in the budget posted with the warrant for the purposes set forth therein totaling $27,801,104. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $27,831,629, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Hampstead School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 3 operating budget does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant articles. And this will require just a majority vote at the regular voting election, the second session. And this is recommended by the school board 5-0 and 0 abstaining. So does someone want to move Article 3 forward?
So moved.
Karen moves it forward.
I'll second.
Jason seconds it. And does someone want to speak to the operating budget? I recognize Jason Cipriano to speak to the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I've got a budget overview presentation, and the way that it's going to go is I'm going to walk through key budget drivers, and I'll talk about our projected enrollments. I'm going to talk about budget changes by department. So by department is school, school buildings, special ed, and you'll see the different departments broken out. I'll talk about staffing, and then the overall budget proposal, as well as the default budget. Okay, so key budget drivers. Not surprising, one of our key budget drivers as a large employer is the cost of healthcare. That's represented by our insurance rate and the GMR. GMR is the guaranteed maximum rate. We expect to see an increase of 6.5% on our insurance this coming year. We also have increases in special education tuition, transportation, and related services due to changing student needs. Technology infrastructure projects are complete, and so we're able to move to an equipment replacement program. Over the last couple of years, we've been updating our technology infrastructure in the buildings. We've now completed the large-scale rollout, and we're able to just kind of maintain the systems that we have in place. Previously deferred facilities projects at both schools. One of the themes here, and one of the impacts that the board has had to wrestle with, is that with the Article 2 and the desire of the board to keep taxes to manageable levels, we've deferred maintenance, regular maintenance, with the hope that that helps us get Article 2 passed. But there's certain maintenance projects that I'll talk about that we have deferred and deferred and deferred to the point where we can no longer defer them. We have to address them. New staff added in the current year. Again, if you follow the school board and you follow some of the activities over the year, you'll know that in this year we added 2 new staff positions. We added 2 new staff positions, a school resource officer, SRO, as well as a social worker. We also have budgeted projected enrollments. Hampstead Central School down 8, HMS down 2, PA down 3, a total of minus 13, a net change of decrease of 13, but in terms of our overall enrollment, that's within about 1%, and we've seen that over the last couple of years. And again, I'll show the projected enrollments. We're kind of flat where we've been up 1% or down 1% for a little while, and we're projecting out pretty steady enrollment over the next few years. So let's go right into that. Here's the projected enrollment chart. So we use a third-party service, NESDEC. They provide us with projected enrollments based on a number of factors, birth rates in the area, as well as a couple of other factors. The NESDEC enrollment for 2019-2020 are projected at 1,265. This represents a decrease of 29 at pre-K through 4 at 440, a decrease of 2 at HMS at 380, and a decrease of 16 at PA or Pinkerton Academy at 441. We think that that's probably going to be unrealistic considering the actual numbers that we have. So we've seen some actual numbers that don't sync up with some of the projections. And so we've targeted our budget with an HCS enrollment of 461, a PA enrollment of 454, and that's representing a total of 1299 instead of the 1265. And we're confident that the numbers based on the actual enrollments that we're seeing are going to sync up with that or be pretty close to that. But you can see on the chart, you can see as it projects out through almost through 2030, you can see that we're pretty flat on enrollment. So again, going back to, not to discuss Article 2, but in terms of the needs for the district that are driven by enrollments today aren't going anywhere. So we see those, the enrollment numbers staying pretty level. And there's the building enrollment, so you can see the different buildings enrollment, and that's where we're talking about a 1% enrollment change. Let's talk about staffing budget changes. Staffing levels are going to generally remain unchanged. Where we did add the social worker, we're adding a library media specialist and a half-time FLES teacher. FLES is foreign language for elementary schools. There's in any given year, the board, in conjunction with the superintendent and the recommendations from the building principals, we may reassign some staff based on final enrollment. We have a situation that comes up from time to time, and we have it in the district right now, where we have what you might refer to as sort of bubble grades, where we get really large enrollment in one grade, and it's not supported by the enrollment and the grades on the other sides of it. So we may move teachers up or down a grade to account for a grade level that's just much larger, or in some cases much smaller than the grades around it. So that those kind of reassignments happen, and they're within the district's budgets. We do have a 3% increase for non-union staff, and all union staff are based on current contracts. So the salary change is $388,813, a 4.1% increase, and the benefit change, $305,088. That's a 5.84 increase. For last year's reference, last year on the salary increase was next to zero. That it just had to do with the contract and the way that we negotiated the contract that was approved by the town. The benefit changes last year were about 5.2% increase, so the benefit changes that we're seeing this year are fairly consistent with what we saw last year. As far as district staffing goes, 2018-2019 district staffing, 194.6. 2019-2020 staffing, 190.9. We have a reduction in our staffing. We're planning to reduce a teacher position at HCS, which is currently vacant. We're going to do some things with a reduction of a part-time physical therapist using contract services. And then there's some support positions as well that we're going to, 2 are unfilled and we'll not fill them, and then 2 are filled, but through attrition we're going to see some changes in our district staffing. And as I said before, we do have some additions. The additions include that library media generalist and the half-time, the .5 FLES teacher, and then as I mentioned before, we added the social worker and the SRO. The SRO covered in a different section, but we added both of those things this year during the school year. If we were to look at the budget highlights by section, this is where you can kind of see what's up and what's down, where some of the major changes have occurred. You'll see, and I'll go into detail on these, but we just wanted to provide you with sort of a consolidated statement that showed you where the budget increase is coming from. So the overall budget increase year over year is 3.5%. And you can see that right here. So one of the questions that board members get from time to time is, what was the, because people will get their property tax bills and they may do a calculation and see a number that goes up or down in the property tax, and then they'll ask the school district, what was the school district's change? And so year over year, our change is 3.5%. So the funding sources in terms of where we get our funding, you can see our revenue, state adequacy aid. Our state adequacy aid we're anticipating is actually going to decrease, less aid from the state. Then there's the surplus, and then the rest is coming from local taxes. So even though, and this goes to highlight, again, so one of the reasons that your tax bill might not sync up exactly with the school budget changes is even though the school budget is increasing at a lesser rate, in some cases, in some instances, like we're highlighting here on the state adequacy aid, we're losing we're projecting a loss of $200,000 from state aid. So there's some other factors at play here that the school board has no control over. The state aid, being one of those key factors. And then and I'm going to show this here in a later, or I don't know if I have it in this slide, but another key element of this is the New Hampshire retirement system contributions. So historically, the state over time, since the New Hampshire retirement system was rolled out, contributed in excess of 40% of the funding to it. We're now at essentially 0%. And that gap is being filled by the school district and the town, because the town pays into it as well. So the municipalities are covering that gap that has essentially gone to zero or near zero for the retirement system. And that's a major cost for the district. The budget distribution. So we added this slide a couple of years ago just to highlight and educate some people. The significant majority of the budget is not discretionary, so the school board does not impact a significant portion of the budget. And by that I mean that the contracts, so like salary and benefits, those are negotiated in union contracts, and those are voted on by the town. So the board doesn't have discretion in terms of pay for the union. We pay based on the union contracts that were approved by the town. Another major driver for us, and one of the largest drivers of our cost, is tuition. So as was mentioned earlier, we tuition our high school students into Pinkerton Academy. We do not have a say in the Pinkerton Academy tuition rate, which, and I'm going to ask you again because I asked you, Mr. Dowd, is up what percentage this year on the Pinkerton tuition rate?
Mr. Dowd, you want to be recognized to speak?
Oh, thank you. I believe 5.9.
He's asking the tuition rate.
Yep, I believe 5.9.
Yeah. So we're looking at a 3.5% increase on the school district budget. One of our single largest pieces of the pie, you can see right there, is that tuition cost, which admittedly is not all Pinkerton. Some of that is other tuition. But Pinkerton tuition went up significantly more than the increase that Hampstead is seeing. And the way that we get to that is we fund it by taking away from other areas of our budget. So we had to reduce other areas of our budget to account for a very significant increase in the tuition cost at Pinkerton this year. And go ahead, sorry, Mr. Moderator, if Dr. Metzler could add.
Dr. Metzler, you're recognized to speak.
Great, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to add, we had an opportunity to meet with the headmaster. There were some questions about tuition, and he was great. He explained, was some programmatic things at Pinkerton that they needed to support. And Dr. Wilson and I were both there. We asked all the questions that Hampstead folks would want us to ask, some special ed costs and some different things. Those were all built into the tuition costs for this year. So I didn't want people to think that they just had this huge jump without explanation. I mean, we were more than satisfied. The headmaster was great, and he provided some really good explanations as to what the kids from Hampstead, our students, our children, are getting at Pinkerton. So that was part of the increase. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the input. The point I'm trying to make here is that in order to keep our budget at a pace that at an increased pace that we think is palpable for the town, we have to offset the tuition increase that we're seeing in other areas with some cost savings in some of our different parts of our budget. So our default budget, the default budget was already mentioned at $27,831,629. That's a difference of $30,525 from the proposed budget. I think that's
That's it?
That's it.
Anybody else want to speak? Anybody on the school board want to speak about the operating budget? Does anybody want to speak about the operating budget? Talking about $27 million. No one wants to talk? Okay. Seeing no speakers, and Article 2, the operating budget, is hereby forwarded to the March 12th secret ballot, Tuesday, March 12th, in this school in the gym, all behind us. The next article. The next article is the Capital Reserve Fund. This is Article 4. Article 4 states, shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate up to $125,000 to be placed in the School Renovation, Reconstruction, and Capital Improvement Capital Reserve Fund established in 2006, with such amount to be transferred from the June 30th, 2019 unassigned fund balance, parentheses, surplus, in excess of $150,000, question mark, majority vote required. And it says in parentheses, the first $150,000 of surplus will be returned to the taxpayers. The next $125,000 of surplus will be placed in the Capital Reserve Fund. Any additional surplus will be returned to the taxpayers. The funds from this article come from the 2018-2019 school budget surplus, not from additional taxes. This is recommended by the school board, again unanimous with no abstention. Does anybody want to move that article forward?
So moved.
I'll second.
So, okay, you got Karen moves it and Jason seconds, okay, for the record. Okay, does someone want to speak to the article? You recognize to speak, Jason Cipriano.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to ask Mr. Dowd to speak to this.
I'll defer till the.
Okay, Jason defers to Mr. Dow to speak to the article, Article 4, Capital Reserve Fund.
And if you could also include what the current amount in that account is right now.
I can do that, yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The current balance in the account available is about $620,000 in the capital reserve fund for the district. Our last withdrawal from that would have been for the Hampstead Central School roof renovation project. And as the warrant article states, the amount to be contributed would be $125,000, but only after we've realized the requisite surplus amount in the warrant itself. So it's not going to take $125,000 of surplus. It'll take $125 only if there's $150 after that available.
Is that what you want to say? All set? Cipriani, recognized to speak to Article 4, Capital Reserve Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So just a couple of points that I would make on this. First, let me just put it very succinctly. So only in the event that we have a budget surplus does any money go into this article. This is not on top of anything else that we're asking the town for. It's only in the event that there's a surplus. And to Mr. Dowd's point, it's only in the event that the surplus exceeds $150,000 that we are putting money into this. We have a number of projects within the district that are infrastructure-related projects that are unrelated to Article 2 that we know we need to get done. So we have aging infrastructure just like everybody else. And what this article does is we put a little bit of money aside in the, and over time, we fund some of those larger capital projects. So it could be replacing a roof. We talked about, we deferred on the discussion to repave the driveway here at the middle school, and that was a decision that was made largely, again, to try to minimize the tax impact to the voters while we're still trying to get Article 2. But we know a lot of these infrastructure things, they don't go away. We know that there are pretty significant infrastructure needs at both schools. And so we kind of put this money away and fund some of our longer-term infrastructure projects that are unrelated to what we're asking for in Article 2. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Anybody else want to speak to Article 4? Article 4, the Capital Reserve Fund. I got some people down here. Kathleen, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate too, excuse me, that it does take a vote of the townspeople in order to touch the money in the capital reserve fund. Is that correct? Like, the school board doesn't have the authority to withdraw the money without the voters' permission. Isn't that correct? What's that?
That's a legal question. I'm not sure. Mr. O'Shaughnessy maybe
That's
help
what we've
us
done
with
in the
that one.
past, is we've put it on the ballot out to the voters to approve the funding. It depends.
It depends, is this on? It depends on whether the board has been given authority to withdraw the money from the funds without legislative body approval. So you have to look over at the historical records and see if the voters have given the board the authority to withdraw the funds. If they have given the authority, then you have to hold a public hearing. If they haven't given you the authority, then you have to put an article on there to withdraw the funds. So you have to look at the historical records of the district.
And I believe that the way that we did the roof for the gym portion of the 80s building at HCS was we put it on the warrant and we put it out to the voters. Do you recall? Or no?
Certainly doesn't hurt to put it to the voters.
Yeah,
The
I don't know.
rubber stamp, yeah.
I just wanted to at least, say that. So it's not like if Article 2 doesn't pass, then, we can drain the capital reserve fund and get as much done as we can. It's not really like that. That's all.
Jim Sweeney, do you want to say something?
No, I was just pointing out that Kathleen had a question.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to speak to Article 4? Article 4 being the Capital Reserve Fund. I don't see anybody else who wants to speak, so Article 4 is hereby forwarded to the Tuesday, March 12th secret ballot here at the middle school. From 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. will be the voting. The last article, Article 5, general acceptance of reports. Shall the Hampstead School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2018 annual report? Majority vote required, recommended by the school board. Again, 5-4, 0 against, and 0 abstaining. Someone going to move that forward?
So moved.
I'll second.
Aaron and Jason. Okay. Anyone want to speak to this? I've had people ask me, what is this all about? Anyone want to tell the board what this is about? Anyone wants to say?
I've been answering these questions all day.
So we have routine, what we consider pro
Housekeeping.
forma routine district reports. We get auditors' reports and so forth. These are to accept those reports. We present those to the town. They're available. Our financials are audited. Our district gets audited for a number of reasons. And then we have committee reports and other such things. And we make them available to the town should you want to read them. So, but we need to accept them.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, does anybody else want to speak to Article 5, general acceptance of reports? Seeing no one else who wants to speak, Article 5 is hereby forwarded to the March 12th secret ballot. And I don't know if there's any other business. Does anybody have any other business? Because I'm going to ask for a motion to recess to the secret ballot. Someone move to, is there any other business that anybody wants to discuss tonight? I don't think so. Is there a motion to move to recess to adjourn tonight's meeting? Somebody?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do you get the names of people? Who's the one first? Sarah? We just want to get it for the record here. Did you move to adjourn? Oh, okay, okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose say nay. The ayes have it. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.